Warning, the following podcast contains spoilers related to Portal 2. If you haven't played Portal 2, please stop listening and go finish it. Some of the spoilers include when Wheatley turns evil, when you shoot a portal at the moon, and the identity of Cave Johnson. So if you don't want those spoiled, please stop listening now.
What's the identity of Cave Johnson?
I don't know. Let's do it again. I'll just do it. Okay. That's fine. I can do it again. Hello and welcome to the Split Screen Podcast. I am Alan Williamson. I am joined by Craig Wilson. Now, there's sort of a sad tale to this. This is the second podcast we've recorded today, and Craig was feeling quite down in the first one, but it's okay. We've got him a big caramel milkshake and a McDonald's, so he is fully energised.
Oh, I tried to make a sound, but it's so smooth and caramel. You can't even hear. Let's try that again. Listen.
This podcast is sponsored by McDonald's. So we're doing a bit of a special edition on Portal 2, using what I like to call the Aperture Science conversation sustenance device, or perhaps the humorous phrase time retention tool. We tried to write a couple of reviews for Portal 2, and, I'd originally said they were rubbish, but unsatisfactory is probably the word. I wasn't really enjoying writing mine. Craig wasn't really enjoying writing his.
Nope.
Tried to play a bit of co-op Portal. Didn't really enjoy writing a review of that either. So it seemed a lot more fun to talk about it instead. But at least we think about these things. At least we're not putting out some rubbish in the site. So that's nice.
So Portal 2, just like in a sort of one, if you could sum it up in one phrase, how did you find it?
One phrase? I don't know. How could I possibly describe such a perfect, wonderful game? I would say it is excellent. I thought it was a slow start, but a great finish. That would be what I would say.
Yeah, I think it sort of defied the odds of if you said like we're going to do Portal again and stretch it to 6 or 8 hours. Yeah. I thought it would have got a lot, but I thought it got boring. But I thought they managed to avoid that in quite a lot of clever ways.
Well, we kind of said in our games of 2011 that we weren't really sure how much we were looking forward to it because it might have been CAC. How wrong we were.
Yes,
but what I didn't immediately, I was never totally psyched on it immediately, and I remember saying to you it's pretty good, and that's really how I felt. I mean, whenever I first started playing it, it felt like a sequel to Portal, and that was okay, but it is a totally different game to Portal 1. With Portal, it came out of nowhere. Portal was like a kind of a tasty dessert at the end of the orange box. I mean, the main reason people bought that game was for Half-Life Episode 2, really.
Yeah, Team Fortress 2.
Yeah. So it was the fact that it came out of nowhere, and the people thought it was going to be this kind of wacky puzzle game, but a kind of clinically serious puzzle game. And then there was this undercurrent of dark humour and story, and then right at the end, bam, it really hit you, and it came out of nowhere, and that's part of the reason why people thought it was so good.
Yeah, no, definitely. They managed to capture kind of lightning in a bottle. The sort of story of Portal started with a DigiPen student game called Nabacular Drop that Valve saw, and they decided to buy in, and they're like, okay, well, how can we turn this into a game? And at the time, the development had ramped up with the Orange Box, or there are other games in the Orange Box, so they didn't have the time to really put in a sort of fully dedicated story. I think 8 people worked on it in the end, in total, doing everything. So that's why a lot of the assets were reused from Half-Life, which is why then it gets tied into the Half-Life universe in a lot of very small ways. I mean, it's tied in that there's a presentation in a room that says Black Mesa on it. Apart from that, there's not much, but somehow it kind of just gave it this air of mystery. The fact that everything had such a light touch, because they just didn't have the time to do it.
The other good thing about Portal is whenever you're doing a 12-hour game, it's very difficult for that to even approach perfection. But the fact that Portal was so short meant that everything was perfectly polished.
No, that's
and I think that's what made it so damn good, is because not a single inch of space was wasted.
Yeah, there's an interview with Kim Swift, who is the lead sort of level designer on Portal, and she said when it's tied into Steam, they can track how many people finish it, and they're it's in terms of Valve, it's their most completed game. And that's because you can do it in one sitting, and I think it should be done in one sitting. It goes along a very kind of smooth arc.
I think I tore through it in an afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I saw it, my flatmate played it, and I think the other thing about Portal is that it is a fun game to watch other people play, because you're not dodging bullets, and you're not trying to be aggressive and things. You can stop and think, and that was the thing why you could sort of recommend it to a lot of different people, because you get to move at your own pace.
It's like a good game for people who have never played computer games before, and it's also like if you're uninterested by the idea of a first-person shooter, it's actually a fantastic game to give to people because it's like there's never really any puzzle in Portal that is time limited. You know, you can sort of shoot a portal at the wall, shoot one at another wall, and gradually figure it out. There's nothing where you need really good reaction timing.
Congratulations. Not on the test. Most people emerge from suspension terribly undernourished. I want to congratulate you on beating the odds and somehow managing to pack on a few pounds.
So Portal 2 is not like that. Portal 2, the lightning's been released from the bottle. And they've kind of had up the stakes a bit because they just couldn't repeat the same thing twice. And I think to some extent they've tried to.
They almost did repeat it because they went back to DigiPen and they acquired a new student game which was Tag, the Power of Paint. And in that game it's another first-person shooter, except this time you covered the walls in different types of paint. Some paints would make you nice and bouncy, some would make you go fast.
Just like real paint?
Yeah. Some, if you breathe in heavily enough, I think it makes you quite light.
Yeah, makes the walls ripple. Yeah.
And other ones which you would be able to walk up the walls, basically, so it had this kind of crazy 3D element. And that kind of got me nervous, like as much as I don't read previews and such, when I heard that I was like, ooh, they're trying to recreate the circumstance that brought about the first game.
Yeah.
With the exception that now then they'll have a team of 100 or however many people worked on it, and they've got, essentially it's on Valve time now. There's an unlimited schedule that they can devote to its development. And
well, they had a huge number of people working on Portal 2 compared to the first Portal. Like we just finished the co-op game last week, and the credits just go on and on and on. There's hundreds of people involved.
No, yeah, and the opening scene in Portal 2, where you're in the hotel room like Old Boy, and it starts moving in the crate like Monsters Inc. That whole scene of destruction, they actually have a guy he does all the destruction for like the Transformers movies.
Okay.
He was the guy who came in to do all of the calculations for the physics simulation so that it doesn't, a bit of the wall doesn't fly off and take you out of the room. It's one of the first developed commentary notes, and it's horrifically complicated. But
I haven't listened to the commentary yet. Is it worth checking out then?
I think so. There's not as many as I would hope. Like I sort of want there to be like a constant stream, like as soon as one ends, there's another. But there's certain points where you actually just solve a couple chambers and then you come across another one. So it's not as much as I would like so far.
Maybe I should have listened to this before we did the podcast.
No, but it's I mean, that's kind of interesting. But that just shows, they had the opportunity to like invest in things like that, and you kind of look at it and go, well, it was very cool, but it wasn't as sort of efficient as the first game was. And I say the first one was just, to me, it felt like a short story, and that it had a very clear and very simple narrative arc that it followed, but it then also had this kind of nice little meta commentary on game design. What's the motivation for someone going through the chambers? It's the same as, well, what's the motivation for someone playing through a game? So it had just those nice little things that you could sort of take in an academic sense.
You could read into what you wanted.
Yeah, you could see like taking Portal and teaching it in like a game design course, whereas with Portal 2, because it's much bigger, it's very much the novelization of the short story, and there's it's a bigger, more elaborate arc. It's still relatively few characters in the game that you hear. I mean, 5 maybe, I don't know.
I mean, one of the things that I felt about Portal 2 compared to the first Portal was that the story happens around you. Whereas in a lot of other games, like Half-Life, for example, you're creating the scenarios and the stories. Whereas Portal, you're kind of running through it, and it's not that your actions directly affect it. Like the kind of things happen with GLaDOS and Wheatley. I mean, ultimately, you sort of swap around the cores, and Wheatley takes charge. But apart from that, you're just kind of running through. It's almost like a series of scripted sequences, much more than the other games would be. Compared to, I don't know, something like Halo, where obviously, all you do is kill aliens. But it's very much you killing the aliens. They're not being killed by a malevolent AI or the scenery. Yeah,
I did feel like a lot of the time, as Chell, I was sort of just watching other people. You're watching the interaction between Wheatley and GLaDOS, and there were loads of scenes where I kind of felt just like, as funny as they are, it's like, in terms of my investment, it's like, all right, guys, you done yet?
Yeah.
Can we kind of move on now?
Well, this is it.
It's like the next bit. Or?
It's kind of the problem with Half-Life 2. Maybe one of the only things wrong with Half-Life 2 is that you'd have like Dr. Kleiner chanting away, and Eli and Alex, and you were standing going way and bouncing out and jumping off the tables and putting cactuses into teleporters and things.
It still is like my biggest kind of gripe that I have with Valve games is this notion of a silent protagonist as being like an empty. Well, she's called Chell or Shell, so she's a shell for the player to invest in.
Oh man, that's good.
I find it strange that they keep doing it because they're so. And they make jokes to it to an extent at the very beginning.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. You have to jump instead of communicating.
Yeah, say, press A to say hi, and you jump, and you're like, well, that's nice and funny, but why isn't she saying anything? Why isn't, in the same way that why isn't Gordon Freeman saying anything? And it's only strange in Half-Life 2. It's probably more so because the characters like physically emote to you, like a very touching scene where she's your companion's pressing against the glass as you kind of go on an elevator, and you're just like holding your crowbar, like, you want me to hit something?
Well, that's one of the things with Reach, which you got for your birthday, so you'll know soon. But there is quite a lot of you do get to see your hand picking up a gun and reloading, and your character does talk.
Like a voice?
All right. Your character does talk.
See, that's like
you customize all the external suits and bits, but they do have a voice and they occasionally say things. But they're kind of like a quiet person, but not a silent one, because they're not the leader of the team. So
yeah, it's fair enough. But like, you're saying, for a character like Alan Wake, would you say is the opposite end of the spectrum from the silent protagonist, fully fleshed out, fully voiced, he does his own thing. I relate more to that, and I'm sort of more interested in that than these ideas of you are this odd, empty, vacuum human, this void of human being.
You're kind of like a vacuum superhuman. It's like another one would be somebody like, well, the obvious ones are like Link and Samus, who don't say anything.
Yeah, and it's strange because originally, with Portal 2, it wasn't going to be Chell and GLaDOS. It was sort of set in the 50s, and it was going to be the main guy was going to be Cave Johnson, and his sort of story of becoming an AI and then regretting it or something like that. And obviously they must have like saved some of that because you kind of visit that kind of those kind of structures, but. What they found when they playtested it is that people missed Chell and they missed GLaDOS and they wanted to kind of see her back again, which I find so strange because you're like the biggest non-character in that game. Yeah. Because there's nothing about Chell other than like there's like the little potato display. I don't know if you caught that.
I've got a puzzled look right now. So
part in Portal 2 when you come across
the potato battery experiments. And there's sort of very rudimentary ones, and then there's a fancy one. And then Wheatley says, "Oh, look at that one! It's grown through the roof." And you look at it, and it's this giant sort of tree that's that kind of disgusting mold sort of flower that kind of grows up, and it's growing up through the ceiling. If you actually look at the little display behind it, it's actually by Chell, and that's on Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, which in the sort of canon-y stuff is when GLaDOS shut the facility down. So that's as much as the stories you get. It's like, okay, so. Like and on the panel it says like ingredients something from Daddy's work, which sort of you could infer that then she's the daughter of an Aperture Scientist, which is why she was in the facility. GLaDOS went wild and she got locked down for the rest of her life. I didn't pick up on any of that. That was way too subtle for me.
But you could completely miss that. So which is why I find it strange that people miss Chell because she's not there.
Yeah, she's a bit of a non-entity. Yeah,
it's so strange. So like give her at least some voice. I mean, I don't even know if she doesn't grunt when she falls because you've got the boots and stuff. It's so.
That's true. She's very much not there. Although I guess the thing with Chell is that you see her all the time because of the nature of there being multiple portals. So maybe people just missed the look of that character. Maybe I'm not saying they were necessarily perving, just that it was a bit jarring. In the same way that whenever you're playing in co-op, you see your buddies all the time, and so if they started a new co-op game. Like if they made a Portal 3, please don't make a Portal 3. God, no. If they did make a Portal 3, I would want to see those robots back because I quite enjoyed them.
Yeah, it felt weird that you've got this sphere and then this kind of odd robot and then a potato, and they have more personality than the human in the game.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's fine. I mean, on that point, I was going to say like Wheatley as a character. How did you find him?
Well. I am not a big fan of Stephen Merchant until now because I thought that I was really going to hate that character, and as soon as I heard that Stephen Merchant was doing the voice, I thought,
they preloaded a personality core with the Ricky Gervais podcast.
I know, it's like that to me that's my day of hell. Yeah, that's my Aperture Science endless testing facility of hell. But I thought he was really good.
Hey, how's it going? I talked my way onto the old nanobot work crew rebuilding this shaft. They are really small. So, I know, Jerry! No, I'm on a break, mate. On a break. And, just hang in there for 5 more... What, Jerry? You can't fire me for that. Yes, Jerry. Or maybe your prejudiced worksite should have accommodated a nanobot of my size. Thanks for the hate crime, Jer. See you in court, mate. Anyway, look, just hang in there for 5 more chambers.
It amazes me how Valve managed to put more personality into a blinking eyeball than any other company can put into any character.
Yeah, I mean, that's what when I did the Portal infographic and I had the Matrix thing of personality to like how humanoid a robot looks. It does go to show, you know, that when you're not having to deal with animating a human character, I guess they're a lot more free to have like very natural sounding dialogue. It sounds like off the cuff, most of his comments. I mean, it is very natural to listen to.
I guess a lot of that stuff is probably like whenever they're recording animated films and they record a lot of the lines first and then the animators animate around it. So obviously with the Wheatley thing, that's kind of what you would have to do. But I think a lot of that putting personality into inanimate objects sort of started with Dog in Half-Life 2, and I really liked Dog. I thought he was great, you know?
Yeah, and it all hails back to R2-D2, of course. Just little chirps and beeps, but suddenly you're like, oh, a little sympathetic guy. Oh, he's angry.
I don't know, I never warmed to R2 that much.
A heartless bastard.
He's just
have to bleep that? Probably not. I'll bleep it with some R2 noise.
But no, well, I don't know. 3PO was always a kind of a camp widow twanky type character.
How rude.
No, it wasn't that I didn't like R2, I just didn't think he was like particularly cute and lovable. In the same way that I thought Dog was really good, partly because he was a giant robot that threw cars about.
The other kind of main sticking point that came to my mind, how did you feel about the turn of Wheatley? Once he gets plugged into the kind of GLaDOS unit, like that, I was like fine with that, and I was like, this is great because it kind of plays into that idea of infinite power. Yeah, was it power corrupts?
Absolute power corrupting, absolutely, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's taken to like a nice literal extension where it's actually physically corrupting this like core. Yeah, but when he starts making all of the test courses and they're all really, really stupid. And GLaDOS says, it's because he's
a moron.
He's designed to be a moron. He didn't really seem like that much of a moron before that point to me. No. I mean, he was scatterbrain, I would say. Kind of a bit excitable, but he got you out of the crate. He unlocked some doors and stuff, and he kind of knew where he was going. Yeah. He didn't seem like as much of an idiot as, say, like the turrets or the
absolutely,
like other bits and pieces. I felt that was kind of odd that.
I really quite enjoyed the turrets in Portal 2. I thought they were pretty damn funny. Yeah. Well, it's really there's so many nice touches. Like I liked whenever you had the crazy turrets. They're like, hey, hey, I'm different. It's good. And then you had the sad turret that you pick up for an achievement.
That is I kind of wish they hadn't linked it to an achievement because I think that's my sort of favorite moment. I think in Portal 2 is you're just jumping along the random conveyor belts of all these broken turrets about to be incinerated, or as they call it, like the redemption line.
Yeah.
And you just hear this little quiet, I'm different.
Turret redemption lines active.
And I was like, I raced for that thing, and I was like, no, pulled him out.
What if you pick it up and goes, thank you, doesn't it?
Put him down, and he was like, thank you, and I was like, see you later, little man. And kind of went off.
Prometheus was punished by the gods for giving the gift of knowledge to man. He was cast into the bowels of the earth and picked by birds. Her name is Carolyn. Remember that.
I think I know we talk about achievements too much, but the achievements in Portal 2 are brilliant. They
all appear to be easily attainable.
Yeah,
which is what I enjoy.
Well, I like that they make you do fun things, like the bit whenever GLaDOS, you're escaping from GLaDOS, and she makes you say, oh look, you actually reached the end of the test course, and if you go and follow her, you get an achievement for being stupid.
I actually did that because I saw, she starts drawing a big heart on the wall, and I was like, well, I'm going to be able to get out of here somehow.
And then you get
there's a lock and kill you reload, but it's a kind of funny. It's a funny enough idea. I laughed during the load. I was like, well done.
Another one I liked was the part which is called the part where he killed you, where Wheatley's about to kill you, and he's like, please come back. and it's the kind of thing we just run on.
I just left.
I just left it cleared off. But then if you go back, it's not that you get an achievement for doing it. It's funny that if you go back and goes, I didn't expect you to come back. Do you want to just jump into that pit over there? You jump in and he goes, oh, thanks. That's it. Actually dead. But it was really funny.
They did have like a number of very nice, like I'd say, like moments like that where you kind of get, Valve. I think they kind of get credited as being sort of masters of sort of single player experience, but it's just they're really good at misdirection. They're like a really good magician where they can have their hand like waving in front of your face and you're watching it, and then you realise the other hand is kind of taking your watch off. Like that great moment where it's near the end when Wheatley tricks you and there's a bouncing box on a faith plate in front, and you see by this point you're well versed in what to do with an aerial faith plate, and you see it and you're kind of waiting for the timing to go and you go jump and it just shunts you to the side. And it's like, again, it's like great misdirection of look over here. Also earlier on when Wheatley's sort of peeking around the panels and stuff. Yes.
And then there's I like the bit whenever you're on the faith plate that breaks, and he like starts talking to you, but you come back down and you get like morsels of the conversation. And for a while I was trying to work out how to stay up there and what was going wrong.
But yeah, they did a lot of those moments quite well. It was, broadly speaking, it was a lot more comedic than I thought it was going to be.
It is like a video game comedy. It's not. I mean, it's not quite as funny as Monkey Island, but it is very much. Well, I guess this is one of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
It is very much a comedy and a story rather than a traditional puzzle solving game. I know we said before that we didn't enjoy the reviews we'd written, but we still wrote them, and so we thought it was better to salvage a couple of bits. And so what we did was we picked out one talking point from each of our reviews, and then we thought they'd be interesting. So maybe they won't be interesting, maybe that'll be a total failure, but so here's an excerpt from the Portal 2 review that I wrote that you will never read. I said, most of your satisfaction in Portal 2 comes from the gradual unfurling of the story, rather than the completion of the test chamber puzzles. This is the opposite of how Portal felt, and it's not necessarily a better game for it. In Portal we delighted in solving the puzzles, while a thin vein of dark humour kept us intrigued. In Portal 2 you're so eager to unravel the next chunk of story that the puzzle barriers in the way can feel like a bit of a slog, especially when you're having difficulty solving them. So, Mr. Wilson, let's talk about this. What do you think? I mean, did you feel the way I did, that Portal 2 was about getting to the next part of the story, whereas Portal, the satisfaction came from solving the puzzle?
Yeah, I thought they were quite clever in how they sustained the story over such a length, because if you think of the first one, this narrative story, and then the story of you, the player, you learn the basics of something, you then advance to mastering it, and then you use it in a way that beats GLaDOS. That's essentially the way it goes. And in Portal 2, they kind of do that 3 times. I mean, you do that first against GLaDOS again, and then you go down into the Cave Johnson era, and you then learn all the gels from starting, and then you use that to escape that. And then with Wheatley, it's a sort of combination, I think, using the hard light
and the tunnels and things,
and the gels kind of come into it again. But it was, I mean, I played it in one go, like straight, more or less. I stopped for a meal halfway through.
You beast.
But once I finished, I did feel like I've played Portal 3 times now, because I've gone through that path of here's a new technique, and now you use it to kill a robot that tries to kill you, but you manage to escape just before the end.
Yeah.
So by the end, when you're going sort of with GLaDOS and you're going to confront Wheatley, I was kind of like, okay, again. And then I was sort of somewhat disappointed with the final battle being so similar to the first game.
It wasn't terribly.
I mean, it saves.
It wasn't that much to do, and it was fairly obvious what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that. It's like any game that. Even really good games have that kind of feeling, like the end of BioShock, where you have to fight the big blue man at the end. And you knock him out and he comes back a bit stronger. End of Arkham Asylum, same thing.
Yeah, but
a lot of games do that with that silly final boss. And I'd expected better from Portal 2.
It was better from Valve, just because with Half-Life 2, it's not. You remember the end of that game? You're really just sort of knocking shields off a wall.
Yeah, it's another disappointing ending.
Oh, I was going to say, but it's not a battle.
No.
But like the way it's a sort of climactic thing when you're doing it, it's sort of story-wise it's kind of ramped up there, so you kind of feel that closure of, okay, we don't need to end on a spike. Like it did start to feel like it was the story that leads you on.
Yeah.
And it did start to feel like a bit repetitive to me, although they were very clever in changing up the environments.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I think we've explored everything there is to kind of explore now.
I think it's thoroughly finished. I would love to. I'm going to play through it again, like the whole way through the story, and spot all the bits that you've pointed out that I missed, and really enjoy it. But I was chatting to Rick about this, about the sort of longevity of the game, and one of the things that it doesn't have is the first Portal had like wee advanced test chambers. And it had like challenges and things, and those are completely absent from Portal 2. So there's definitely a lot less replay value there, and I think that is probably why a lot of people feel like it. That perhaps it is a bit brief for your £40. But I guess half of them probably aren't playing the co-op, which we're obviously going to talk about in a minute. But I feel like they could have give you more incentives to come back, like some more difficult sections.
No, I don't sort of particularly agree there, because I don't feel that sort of on the money side that there needs to be there's like a proportionality between like the money you spend and the amount of stuff you can kind of do in it.
That's not really what I mean. I'm phrasing it badly, but
but in terms of like advanced chambers and things I did after I complete the game. Went, okay, I'll go sort of do the advanced chambers now. Oh, there aren't any.
It's more because it was a really good world, and I wanted to have another reason to go through it rather than doing the same thing again. And I really enjoyed the advanced chambers in the first Portal.
I think I'm going to go through it again I'm going through it on the commentary.
Oh, okay.
But the puzzles themselves this time round, and I'm not sure. It's hard to say. You're never going to get. I'm not just comparing this to the first Portal, but the first one was full of a lot of the aha moments when you suddenly realise what it is you're supposed to do, but you can't. If someone asks you to articulate it, you probably wouldn't. You'd just be like, "No, I think I've got it," and that's part of the fun in the co-op is that aha moment. But in Portal 2, there only felt like there were 2 or 3 times where that really happened. Everything seemed fairly straightforward and obvious.
I think that's another big difference is with Portal 1 you felt like you were creating your own solutions.
Yeah.
Not all of the time, but at least some of the time. Whereas Portal 2 was like, right, there is a solution buried in here because we've only painted certain sections of the wall white.
Yeah.
So you're just going to have to figure out the way to solve this.
Yeah, especially in the Cave Johnson section.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very brown environment. And you're like, oh, there's the white portal there, so you just pop one up there and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing next, but that's part of it. And it's it's fair enough. It's a puzzle game, but it is like there's one key to solving this puzzle. Part of the fun was
the creativeness, and you'd think with like the ability to spray all the walls and different kinds of gels that there would be more creativeness, but
I did feel that
didn't really emerge.
Yeah, I think the idea of like spraying walls, especially with the conversion gel, it ended up just being a switch by another name. I mean, I'm sort of kind of coming off like a bit negative there, but it was very much doing the same things I've done before.
Look, the conversion gel, the only thing you had to do was it was just hose everything in conversion gel, and then that let you escape from anywhere. I'd like to see the like Portal. My sort of dream for Half-Life Episode 3 would be to give you that portal gun and to let you use it in the real world to solve puzzles creatively, and to see if Valve are clever enough to make a game where you can essentially break it at any point by portaling all over the place, and see what kind of game would that be. Yeah, because have you seen the video on YouTube with the guy that modded Half-Life 2 and stuck a portal gun in it?
No.
It's really good because it's like, do you remember the bit in like the very second level where you come down this sort of train tunnel and a guy kicks a barrel down a hill? In the video, he shoots a portal at the far wall, so the trigger doesn't occur where the soldier kicks it down, so he just pops out and shotguns the barrel and takes the soldier out. It's great. But we're being really negative here.
Well, it's not that. It's just. I mean, the essence is it's Portal 1 but longer. It just would have been nice to see if they'd taken it in a very different direction. It was just sort of things that were added to it, and it's funny and it's fine, but like I say, it doesn't, unless there's a reading that I've missed, it doesn't sort of speak to anything else. It kind of would be interesting if they could have done the story in a way of like the pressure of making a sequel to something, which is great. But don't criticize the game for what it was never going to be. Well, I can't say I wasn't a bit disappointed when I didn't find any of that in there. I was like, because I'd sort of held that as the pinnacle of writing, and then a lot of the jokes weren't that funny. No.
I mean, do you feel like they were trying too hard to come up with quotable quotes this time? Like the stuff with the potato batteries and things was like, it's the new cake. That kind of thing.
I'm sure they would have like tried to like both avoid obviously.
I read an interview with Erik Wolpaw and said, that he says, if you thought those jokes were getting tedious, how do you think it feels for me?
Yeah, I mean, there's a really interesting quote from Erik Wolpaw. He did an interview after Portal 1 came out, and he said on the point he's spoken about it elsewhere as being like a delta between the gameplay story and then the narrative story. But it's a bit boring. But the way he phrased it here was like,
right. I almost don't think of games that much as a narrative medium. I mean, everybody's talking about storytelling games or whatever. I kind of think of what I do as sort of like being a composer for a movie. Like, gameplay is what people are there for, and I'm just sort of enhancing the gameplay in ways that I can that aren't that intrusive or obvious, which generally means pulling it back a little bit. Which isn't to say, I mean, there's plenty of game final, lots of...
the story sort of intrudes all over the place here.
Yeah, but the story breaks the game. It stops the game while the story's occurring.
But it is kind of the only way they could have done it, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of like the humor and whether it's quotable, I think I don't know. It's
what's your favorite Portal 2 quote that we're going to later dub into the podcast? But you can just say it in a comedic voice now if you want. You can cut it in.
Well, I like the sort of rant that Cave Johnson goes on. I thought his character sort of got more interesting when you hear him getting sicker, and then the revelation about Caroline and her sort of fate.
Yeah.
But his rant about the lemons, I think, was a nice twist on like an old, something you've heard before, but never really taken in that direction.
All right, I've been thinking. When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Make life take the lemons back. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemons! What am I supposed to do with these?
Take the lemons.
Demand to see life's manager. Make life rue the day it thought it could give Cave Johnson lemons. Do you know who I am? I'm the man who's gonna burn your house down with the lemons.
Oh, I like this guy.
I'm gonna get my engineers to invent a combustible lemon that burns your house down.
His house down. Burning people. He says what we're all thinking.
The point is, if we can store music on a compact disc, why can't we store a man's intelligence and personality?
Did you have sort of something that rings in your head still?
My favourite quote kind of came out of nowhere, and it was from near the end of the game, whenever Wheatley's trying to kill you.
Wow, good. Finally, a nemesis worthy of my vast intellect. Holmes versus Moriarty. Aristotle versus Matthew Spikeplate.
See, I'd laughed so much whenever I heard that. I was like, actually, it was one of those pause the game because I'm laughing so hard moments. And the way people had written about it before, I thought that was gonna feel like that the whole way through. But to be honest, I laughed a lot at the start and a lot at the end. But I think in the middle. I mean, I don't know. The Cave Johnson scenario just didn't. It was interesting, but I thought it was quite predictable, and I could see where it was going very quickly.
It was very one joke, in terms of he's a southern industrialist who has a poor grasp of science, but has the means to perpetrate it in adventurous ways. It was fine enough. I also couldn't stop thinking of J. Jonah Jameson, because I thought he sounded like the guy who sort of yells at Peter Parker in the Spider-Man movies.
Oh, okay.
Where are those pictures, Parker? The scientist boys are telling me that the blue gel, whatever.
Yeah, I forget what you call it. It's like J.K. Simmons, or something. Is that the name of the actor that plays him?
Yeah, I don't know. I could draw a picture, but
you would know his face to see him.
It might be.
I don't know if it's the same guy as JJ, but yeah, I mean, I think he's quite a well-known dude anyway.
But in terms of like positives, because I did enjoy it. It's a great game. It's just if I think stop and think to talk about it, these are the things that come to mind.
It is great. It's got a really compelling story. It's very fun. It's very clever. It's very funny, and it's one of the few funny games out there. It's not something like Death Spank where it's like I am trying to be funny and failing. It's genuinely laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
It's good. Really strong artistic design. It's got this fantastic procedurally generated sound.
That's what I was going to say, was the sort of
really lovely
for me
sound.
That was the best kind of addition, which is taken really straight from Auditorium as a game, where in that game you're actually manipulating sound in a bit more of a physical way, but as you solve the puzzles, which tend to be 2 or 3 different components to it, a different element of the sound will kind of feed in. So, and this happened in Portal when you're directing the light gaze.
and also the faith plates make their own wee noises and things.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool. And it could have been nice to, I don't know if it would be possible to see more of that.
Yeah.
But it did. It was a much more interesting way than when the sort of stock music plays up in the background at certain moments. I did like that, you know, when you're flying through the air and the faith plate and you hear the little kind of blippy music, and then when you come down and you're back to just the ambient sound of kind of water and sort of some birds in the background, maybe.
I guess the reason we're being, well, we've been somewhat harsh, at least, you know, we've been talking about things we didn't like about the game and where it failed, is because it is so good, because Portal was so good, and it's nice that in spite of all the things we can talk about and say that we didn't like, that we're still saying it's absolutely fantastic, and you should, if you have not finished it, immediately go out and purchase it.
Yeah,
because you'll love it. Even in fact, no, my dad probably won't like it. Every time I buy a game from my dad, he doesn't like it, but everybody else will probably love it. And I just realised that we're running quite low on time, so we should talk about the co-op.
Co-op, yeah. So the co-op, which I think when we started playing the co-op before I'd actually started playing the single player.
Yeah, we played it split screen in my flat.
And I remember
oh yeah,
like one of the ideas we had was like, oh, it'd be really cool if it was actually just a co-op, if something emerged in the co-op game in a similar way to how the kind of story emerges from the first Portal.
We kind of wanted it to have like a massive twist out of nowhere.
And you know, that would have been, you know, because again, you know, people, they're buying Portal 2 for the story as such, and the co-op is something extra, so very similar to getting the orange box and Portal has been the extra. And it didn't quite happen. I think that
it's so very puzzles, almost did.
It almost does. Yeah, we'll get to that. The co-op puzzles I found, I mean, they are easier they're less difficult rather than the single player ones, obviously, because there's the cooperation element in it.
You've got two people. I think, without trying to sound too cocky, I think we knew what we were doing, and I think we'd played enough of the first Portal that we were pretty well versed in it, and like off the back of the single player game, we absolutely rattled through it. We tore through it in about 2 nights.
Yeah.
And I would have liked it to be harder, but I can appreciate why it wasn't.
I think a puzzle game with 2 people where you get like properly stuck in that kind of frustrating way that Braid kind of
you would just turn it off and never play it again.
You would just go. You almost want to apologise to the other person for bringing them into it and go, just go play.
I'm sorry we've gotten into this mess.
You'd just be like, oh God, what's going on? But I thought the way they handled the how they handled coordination between the 2 players was superb, really.
I don't like the way the gestures work, and I don't like the way you have to push like left on the D-pad and then push up on the stick. Like up the stick directly above it to select the timer. I thought it was a bit convoluted. I would rather just tap left and away you went and knock the timer off.
Yeah, they probably could have.
I think that was a bit fiddly.
Implemented, but like the in terms of just what it achieves once you get it down. I mean, the timer, ping tools.
The best thing is whenever you hold the Y button and it shows you a tiny screen, because that's fantastic. Because I said to you whenever we first started playing it, this will be better in split screen because we can see what we're doing, whereas online it's different. But that eliminates that problem. That's so clever. It's like, you can see exactly what the other person's doing, and I can say to you, "Can you see this?"
Yeah.
And then you'll be like, "Yeah." That's great. That's really clever.
It solved the kind of potential problem where there's some times where one of the bots has to just stand on a button. And you can't step off that button, otherwise the other person's going to die. So you would say, like, if you couldn't watch what they're doing, and I think most of the levels are designed quite well, so you can always sort of be in visual contact without the little screen. But certainly for the last puzzle, where you are in kind of different rooms,
it would be a bit disorienting. It would
be very boring for one person.
Boring.
So they kind of sort of managed to make that,
So what do we think about the co-op ending? Because it left me with a bad taste in my mouth. I thought it was like a big letdown.
It was like a rubbish Tekken end. Like, I've had more satisfying ends to a Tekken game. I thought they introduced like the idea of like, you're going to go save humans. I was like, ooh. I remember saying it to you actually.
Like,
why they've mentioned that quite. They've just mentioned it. You're off to save humans. And obviously, in terms of doing a story in the co-op game, it needs to be smaller phrases from GLaDOS, because you've got it's more like Left 4 Dead in terms of,
there's quite clever bits. Like there's phrases she says that only one of us hears, and it's like, don't tell Blue this, but you're my favourite robot, and all things like that. I thought were really funny. Like, did you hear that? No.
Yeah, and that was quite good. Trying to create like division. But in terms of like the ending, where it becomes the Matrix.
Yeah,
and it's not a very good looking Matrix either. I mean, I never pick things on like how bad they look, but those humans look really bad in those crises, and it felt to me like it undoes everything that I did in the single player, because the co-op takes place after Chell leaves.
Kind of undermines Chell's redemption, doesn't it?
Well, it's sort of GLaDOS redemption as well, because really, Portal 2 is sort of more of an arc of... I keep saying that. It's more of her development as a character.
But it finishes off the story quite nicely, whereas the co-op kind of opens it up again.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you're kind of left with GLaDOS, like, she's testing with robots now that can be rebuilt, so she can be happy and fulfilled, but there isn't this, like, shocking crime to humanity. Aperture Science, surely the human population would have noticed that a significant chunk of them are missing and are underground, even if this is taking place in whatever the Combine, wars or whatever the Half-Life thing is. Like, how did so many people go missing? And it felt kind of cheap, like, you just see them sort of scanning at the end, and, like, I hope that isn't, like, an opening to a Portal 3 kind of thing.
I mean, it couldn't. I think it couldn't have been less silly unless it played, like, Kraftwerk's Popcorn over the end.
Yeah,
that's how farcical it got.
But even in terms of, like, your robots, if you think of their little story, like, I was, happy when they're testing, but now they're probably not going to be used, are they? Because she's sort of going to resume human testing now.
No, that's it. She won't bother.
She deleted her sort of sympathetic bit.
I
kind of felt like it was a null ending. It was sort of null ending on the part of the robots and for the single player. So I was really
one thing I didn't like with both endings is that there's a cutscene at the end and it takes control away from you, and I felt that was a bit.
Yeah, I've seen
that was pretty poor.
Like
I don't like that kind of game's over, sit back and relax type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of like edge of my seat in the single player, especially after the kind of moon shot. But I did feel that it was. I've seen Erik Wolpaw did an interview, and he said, like, well, we tried to do it in game, but it just didn't look as good. You go, well, I probably didn't need to see a choir of turrets singing. No, it's like, that didn't really think I was that necessary. I think almost it would have made more sense. Like, I wasn't as bothered with the fact that the co-op had a CG ending. Yeah, but imagine if sort of CG opening.
Imagine if the single player had ended with you still being in control, and you actually physically walked Chell out yourself into a meadow and it faded.
White. Yeah,
wouldn't that have been better? Because that would have felt like you'd achieved something a lot more.
No, that would have been a great. That would have been a lot nicer.
There you go.
Could have done with that companion cube showing up as well at the end. I thought they did the companion cube stuff interesting, where you go pick up and it just fizzles away.
That was quite nice. Yeah,
I was like, yeah, cool, well done.
So yeah, that's a better ending for it. And if anybody from Valve is listening, Craig's starting a new job, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind working for you, and I'm happy to work as well. So come and hire us. Be great fun. But I mean, all in all, it's a really, really great game. And I know we've been harsh, but we're really just talking about things. We're not being harsh. We're being passionate about it because we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to be able to kind of look at a game which was kind of a lot more adventurous this time, and by and large they pulled it off.
I think it's a big success overall. It was an impossible act to follow up on, and they've done very well.
Yeah.
So we've come to the part of the podcast where we always have trouble getting an ending, but luckily we thought of something funny. So first things first, what score would you give Portal 2 out of 5? Since we're not rating games out of 10 anymore.
4 stars, solid 4 stars. Yeah,
good 4 stars. Yeah, I'd probably give the single player 5 and the co-op 4. So we'll say 4 overall. Yeah. Cool. So there you go. That's that out of the way.
An audio 4 stars.
An auditory 4 stars. So let's just imagine for a minute that Aperture Science have made lots of new crazy gadgets, and you get to pick one to better your life. I've chosen the verbal deceleration aerosol, which would enable me to stop speaking so quickly. And you might have noticed that I have slowed down because I've just become incredibly conscious of the fact that I talk too quickly. So yep, I would pick some verbal deceleration aerosol.
Right. And I would just want to go out with some more smooth jazz.
Smooth jazz, good call.
Okay, cool.
Boop, boop, boop.
3,
hey.
2, 1.